The first roar of machinery shattered my morning silence before my coffee had time to cool. And when I looked out the window, my stomach dropped. A full-sized excavator was tearing into the earth behind my house, scooping up soil like it belonged to someone else, because apparently, to her, it did. That was the moment I realized my quiet life had collided, head first with the most dangerous force in suburbia. An HOA, Karen with unchecked authority. I bought my land to escape rules, not drown in them. No HOA dues, no meetings, no clipboard patrols. Just trees, open ground, and a clear property line I'd verified twice before signing. The neighborhood next door was different. Perfect lawns, matching mailboxes, and a homeowners association run by a woman who treated bylaws like divine law. Everyone whispered her name with the same tone people reserve for storms. Karen. After a heavy week of rain, water pooled near the fence separating our properties. Instead of checking drainage reports or calling the county, Karen decided to act. Her solution was a retention pond. Her mistake was assuming my land was community overflow space. No call, no notice, no permission, just machines. I walked straight to the operator and told him to stop. He showed me paperwork stamped with the HOA logo and said he was following orders. When I called Karen, she answered calmly, confidently, and falsely. According to her, a survey placed the pond within community boundaries. That phrase alone told me everything. People who tell the truth don't invent language. By noon, the hole was deep enough to change how water moved across my property. My grass was gone. My survey stakes had been pulled. When I called the county, they told me inspectors could take days. Karen knew that. She was betting on speed, on the idea that once the pond existed, undoing it would be too much trouble. That night, I stood at the edge of the pit as rainwater gathered at the bottom, reflecting the sky like a warning. Anger burned, then sharpened. I didn't need to argue. I needed leverage. Something faster than bureaucracy and louder than entitlement. So instead of making another complaint, I made one call to an earth-moving company known for precision, permits, and power. Karen thought dirt was authority. She had no idea what real control looked like. The rumble reached my house before the trucks did, a deep vibration rolling through the ground like distant thunder. Moments later, 3 semis, 2 bulldozers, and a massive excavator pulled into my driveway with practiced precision. Orange paint glowed against the morning green. The foreman stepped down, shook my hand, checked the survey stakes, and nodded. No speeches, no curiosity, just work. Karen arrived 10 minutes later, heels sinking into soft soil, phone already recording. She shouted about trespass, vandalism, and environmental crimes, her voice sharp and rehearsed. The foreman calmly pointed to the flagged boundary and asked her to step back for safety. She refused, so he shut the machines down and called the sheriff. The pause was intentional. Documentation matters. When the deputy arrived, everything slowed. Deeds came out. Surveys were laid flat on a truck hood. Permit numbers were checked. Karen's confidence faded with every page. The deputy said it plainly. The pond was illegal, and it was dug entirely on my land. Karen argued once. The deputy didn't respond. He didn't need to. When the engines restarted, the air changed. The excavator's arm swung wide, peeling the black liner out of the pit like a discarded bedsheet. Bulldozers pushed the berms inward, reversing days of damage in minutes. Mud flowed, then settled. Ducks scattered in confusion. Karen screamed about taxpayer money and community safety, but steel against soil drowned her out. Neighbors gathered along the fence, phones raised. Expressions split between shock and relief. Some whispered that they'd paid special assessments for the pond. Others admitted they were afraid of flooding. I caught fragments drifting through the crowd. She never asked. I knew something was off. This is unbelievable. By noon, the pit was gone. The foreman graded the slope to restore natural drainage, compacted the soil, and spread straw for erosion control. He asked if I wanted anything else. I looked at Karen, now silent. Her recording stopped, her posture rigid. I said yes. Restore the fence line and install boundary stakes. Make it unmistakable. She threatened lawsuits. I welcomed them. Trespass, property damage, misrepresentation, unjust enrichment. Her pond had invoices. My response had compliance. The deputy returned briefly to ensure peace and advised Karen to consult legal counsel before speaking again. She left without another word. That afternoon, an emergency HOA email went out. Karen framed it as sabotage. Then my documents circulated. The story cracked. The legal threat arrived the next morning in a thick envelope, heavy with bold text and heavier with arrogance. Karen accused me of sabotage, intimidation, and interference with community infrastructure. She demanded compensation for the emergency pond removal and warned of swift legal action. I read it once, calmly, then scanned it to my attorney. His reply came faster than expected. One sentence said everything. This is going to unravel quickly. Discovery did most of the work for us. Emails showed Karen knew the survey. Line didn't favor the HOA, internal board messages. Revealed multiple members warning her to stop excavation until boundaries were verified. Invoices proved HOA funds were spent on private property without easements or permits. Each document stripped away another layer of authority she relied on. Confidence without legality collapses fast. The county joined in soon after. Inspectors cited unpermitted excavation, improper environmental review, and misuse of association funds. Karen tried reframing the issue as a safety emergency, but records showed no hazard reports filed before digging began. Her urgency, it turned out, was convenience. Homeowners started asking questions. Why were special assessments charged for a pond that disappeared? Why were surveyors never consulted? Why did the sheriff side against their president? Karen called emergency meetings, but attendance dropped with each one. Control only works while people believe. Mediation was scheduled. Karen arrived loud, flanked by counsel, armed with talking points. She left quieter. The settlement required full reimbursement for land restoration, payment of legal fees, and personal liability for trespass damages. Most importantly, she agreed to resign as HOA president immediately and permanently. No appeal, no conditions. The board announced her departure in a carefully worded email that avoided names but couldn't avoid relief. Within weeks, new leadership took over, quietly undoing policies she had enforced loudly. Karen sold her home not long after, listing below market value. Reputation, like land, carries consequences. I never asked for an apology. I didn't need one. The soil settled. Grass returned. Rainwater flowed naturally again, exactly as it always had. The crisis Karen claimed to prevent never materialized. Once ego was removed from the equation, what stayed with me wasn't satisfaction, but clarity. Authority without boundaries is just noise. Momentum doesn't create ownership. And when someone mistakes confidence for control, all it takes is patience, preparation, and proof to bring everything back into alignment. Life didn't return to normal all at once. Conflict leaves an echo, and for weeks every distant engine made me look up. But land has its own way of correcting things. The soil settled. The straw broke down. New grass pushed through, stubborn and green. By the end of the season, you couldn't tell a pond had ever existed unless you knew where to look. The HOA changed quickly after Karen left. Meetings became shorter. Emails lost their threatening tone. The new board sent a letter acknowledging the mistake without naming it directly. They promised transparency, proper surveys, and county coordination moving forward. It wasn't an apology, but it was accountability, and that mattered more. Neighbors started stopping by my fence line. Some thanked me quietly. Others admitted they'd been afraid to challenge. Karen for years, fines, violations, public shaming. She had ruled through pressure, not respect. Seeing her removed changed something fundamental in the neighborhood. People remembered they had voices. The county closed its investigation with fines, issued and written violations recorded. Against the HOA, the illegal pond was documented officially. Not erased, but corrected. Paper trails matter. They outlast personalities. They ensure the same mistake isn't repeated under a new name. I invested in my own drainage improvements afterward, engineered and permitted. Subtle enough no one noticed unless it rained hard. Water moved where it always should have. No pooling, no flooding, no drama. The solution Karen rushed never needed to exist in the first place. What surprised me most was the quiet satisfaction of restraint. I never raised my voice. I never insulted her publicly. I let processes, machines, and documents speak. Power doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks prepared. Karen's house sold within months. A moving truck arrived early one morning, just like the excavators had. No crowd gathered this time. No one filmed. She left the way authority figures often do when exposed, quietly and without ceremony. Standing on my land one evening, watching rain soak evenly into the soil, I realized something important. This wasn't about winning. It was about boundaries, physical ones, legal ones, personal ones. When those lines are respected, everything functions better. When they're ignored, chaos follows. The land was peaceful again, not because someone was in charge, but because the right limits were restored. That kind of balance doesn't need enforcement. It maintains itself quietly, as long as someone is willing to defend it when tested. Time has a way of shrinking conflicts once their lessons settle in. Months passed, then a full year, and the story of the illegal pond slowly turned into local legend. New neighbors heard it secondhand, usually framed as a warning. Don't assume, don't overreach, don't mistake position for permission. The land stayed quiet, doing what land does best when left alone. I still keep my documents organized. Surveys, permits, correspondence. Not out of fear, but respect. Ownership isn't just about possession. It's about responsibility. Knowing where your rights begin and end matters more than most people realize, especially when authority figures forget theirs. The new HOA leadership never contacted me directly again, and I appreciated that. Boundaries once restored don't need constant reinforcement. They just need acknowledgement. On my side of the fence, life returned to its intended rhythm. Morning coffee outside. Evening walks along the tree line. Rain falling without consequence. Sometimes I'd catch myself replaying that first morning. The shock of seeing machines on my land. What struck me later wasn't the audacity, but the assumption. Karen assumed no one would challenge her. She assumed speed would override law. She assumed confidence was enough. Those assumptions collapsed the moment facts arrived with horsepower. People often ask if I'd do anything differently. The honest answer is no. Not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Standing up doesn't always mean confrontation. Sometimes it means preparation. Sometimes it means waiting for the right moment, then acting decisively. I learned that bullies thrive in gray areas. Clear lines terrify them. Surveys, permits, receipts, those things don't raise voices, but they end arguments. And when combined with professionals who respect those lines, they become impossible to ignore. The earth-moving company sent me a thank you card weeks later. Simple, professional, it sits in a drawer now. But I remember the feeling of that first rumble. The sound of balance returning. Machines undoing what never should have been done. If there's a moral to this story, it's not about revenge or victory. It's about restraint paired with resolve. About knowing when to speak and when to let action speak for you. About defending what's yours without becoming what you oppose. The land is quiet again. And this time it's quiet because it's right.